I was on a convoy for a humanitarian mission. So we were supposed to be delivering medical supplies and water to an outskirts village as part of like a humanitarian aid thing. And we were escorting some of the medics out there so they could, render aid to people and help those who were sick or injured and stuff like that were Iraqi local nationals. And so I was doing security, so as a 50 cal gunner, because I was certified. One of my many skill identifiers that they forced me to do. Um, and like I said, I never did my job. Um, so we were coming through a village. It was almost like right on the outskirts of the city in Baghdad, um, just past what we call the Great Wall of Baghdad. Um, and on top of and we're they're about some of them were 2 stories high and some of them were 3 stories high of these tall buildings. And if you've ever seen Middle Eastern countries, they're in the cities, they have wide streets, but on the outskirts of the city, they're very, very narrow. About enough for maybe a car to get through, maybe 2 cars, but for the most part, it's about maybe a full car length wide. And it was just enough for our Humvees to get through. And I remember going through and sort of they call it name tape deflate. So if your name tape is here on your uniform, right? So you get your uniform like right here, you're supposed to go down below so your eyes are right here, so that if anything happens, your whole body isn't showing, and so you don't get shot in your center mass. So going through, I was security right. So my 50 cal gun was pointing to the right side, and I'm sitting there pulling security and watching the rooftops. And all of a sudden, I see someone duck up and then duck back down. And I was like, oh no, there's people on the roofs. And so I relayed it over the comms, like, hey, we've got contact on rooftops. And I said no known amount. And so so that means that like we don't know how many are up there. We just know that there's people on the roofs. And then all of a sudden that popped back up again and he started shooting. And at that point, I had popped up just enough so I could start shooting back. And one of the bullets from his AK ricocheted and pinged off of the shield behind me and went into the wall of the building behind me. And I kind of did a quick one of these and looked, and I was like, crap, that was close. So he had a malfunction with his gun, is what I think it was. I'm not sure if he was reloading or had a malfunction, but he dropped back down, and I said, good, that's my opportunity. So when I reloaded, I loaded up and I waited for him to pop back up. When he popped back up, I hit him with a 50 cal, and I said contact right, and I hit contact right. And so when I saw that happen, he popped back up. I put 3 or 4 rounds into his chest, and just as that happened, I just saw him topple over and damn near almost hit our Humvee as he toppled over, because again, the streets are really narrow, and fell right outside the truck on the passenger side, TC side of the truck. And I just sat there and stared at him, and that's when I realized it wasn't a man, it was a boy. And like they quickly it quickly like that happened, I quickly swiveled back around to look and see at the rest of the right side, because that was my sector, to see if there was any more contact to the right. And so I did cover fire as they were dismounted and started clearing those 2 buildings that the contact was coming from. And once it was all clear and we were sitting there waiting, we were able to get out and pull security on the outside. So I was like, I told my TC at the time, I was like, I gotta get out of this Humvee. I gotta get out. I said, I need some fresh air. He's like, all right, we'll have Bravo 6 come behind you for security. So Bravo 6 came in and pulled security on the 50 cal behind me so that I could get out and step out. And when I stepped out in a pool of that kid's blood. And that's when I realized, like, the gravity of what I had done. And it really sunk in that I had just killed a boy. Like I didn't kill an adult, I didn't kill an enemy, I killed a kid. And it hit me like he's almost as old as I am. Like he could be, my brother. He was almost my brother's age. And it just it I think that's one of the things that broke my spirit the most, is realizing that they're recruiting kids to shoot at us. And we're having no choice but to shoot kids. And it's just this horrible feeling of like, how do we stop this? Like, what has happened so badly? Is it because we're here that this is happening? Or is it because they're that evil? And so I couldn't wrap my mind around the fact that, not only had this kid not even lived his life yet, but that I hadn't lived my life either. I was like, I was 19 at the time. And I realized that like, I can't die here. If I die here, I've got so much more to do with my life. And it became at that point a realization of like, I need to survive. I need to get out of here. And so at that point, you do exactly what you can in order to survive. And one of those things was just, pushing all of that behind the back of your head so that you can do your job. And it wasn't until, I had my own kids that I kept going back to this reoccurring nightmare of shooting this kid. And I realized that it was complete unresolved trauma of that I killed a kid that had this been in the United States, I'd be in jail right now. It doesn't matter if he shot me, I murdered him. And so that was that all unresolved sort of part of my own moral character that like I'm a murderer. Like I killed someone and I couldn't forgive myself for the fact that it was a time of war and that what I had done had taken someone else's child away from them. And it made me think about like what would he have done with his life? Had he not been there, had he not shot at me, had he been at school that day, had he not been recruited for, a terrorist cell. And then I started thinking about my life, like, what if I had that bullet didn't ricochet off of my shield and hit the building behind me? What if it had hit me in the throat? Like where would he have cared about me as much as I care about him now, years later? And it messed me up for a little while because I realized that maybe him killing me wouldn't have meant enough to him for him to remember, or maybe it would have. Maybe he was just like me and would have struggled with the same sort of moral self about having to shoot at someone and kill someone when you're not a trained killer. You're not even close to it. You're not SEAL Team 6. You're not a Green Beret. You're not, an infantryman kicking in front doors. You should be at school or you should be at college. You should be living your life. You should be going, to the south of France with all your other friends and getting drunk on wine at 19. And then yet you're stuck in a war zone trying to just survive every day. And it's one of those things where you struggle with what do you have to do today to survive? And not knowing the answer to that question until you're presented with that situation was hard for me to wrap my brain around at first. And then I remember having a conversation with my sergeant and him telling me, he's like, you just got to shut it off. Just shut it off and realize that you're doing your job. Your government has put you here. Military has put you here, and that they've put you in an impossible situation, and all you're doing is trying to survive an impossible situation.